Hi everyone. Good to see you on my channel today. Today I will tell you a wonderful story. It is full of love and kindness. I hope you enjoy it and I wish you an enjoyable viewing experience. Thank you.
Maddie and Mickey were sitting on a park bench. They were holding hands. You could see the big Maddie between them. Maddie, I don't believe there are feelings like that. He looked into her eyes. Barry, I'm so happy. They were together like crazy. They didn't notice anyone or anything around them. Hello, could you look at my phone? A girl walked into the cellular salon, where they also provided repair services. What happened? A handsome young man came up to her. I don't know. It doesn't hold a charge at all, or I'm doing something wrong. She took the device out of her pocket. Yes, he smirked. The model was not modern at all. What? You can't fix it. The girl was upset. Unfortunately, it's just been working for a long time. That's why it doesn't hold a charge. The guy thought what he could do. Well, thank you. Thought she was left without a phone. You know, I can offer you an alternative. He went into the back. Yes, I'm listening. She liked being treated so well. Just a minute, the young man shouted. Waiting, the girl turned to the display case with phones. Yes, she certainly wanted a new and modern one, but unfortunately, she couldn't afford it. Here, finally, the guy came back. Look, the model, although not new, but will serve for a long time. What? I cannot afford to buy even the cheapest phone. She resented. Really, if she wanted to do it, she would not have chosen it herself. No, you don't understand. You give me yours and I give you this one. He smiled. Is that how it works? She didn't believe it. Why not? The smile never left his face. I don't even know. The girl began to feel embarrassed. It's okay. Take it. He handed her the machine insistently. Thank you very much. She didn't know what else to say. What's your name? He asked her. Maddie, she blushed. And I'm Mickey. He held out his hand to her. Good, she thought. The guy's going to ask for something in return for giving her such a gift. Well, what are you standing there for? You can go. The deal is done, he laughed. I don't even know how to thank you. She stood there blushing. Write down my phone number. I will not ask for yours, so that you do not think anything. But if you decide to call, I will not mind, the young man said with ease. That's it. Maddie didn't believe him. Yes, he could see how unsure the girl was. Good. Then dictate. She prepared to write it down. After Mickey said all the numbers, they said goodbye, and the girl left the salon. She was walking, and her pocket was directly burning through her new cell phone. It still didn't fit in her head how you could come into a store and they gave you something there. Mickey, did you give her the phone for nothing? A colleague asked the guy when they were alone in the store. Yes, he nodded and took the money out of his wallet and put it in the cash register. Are you crazy? His friend laughed at him. There was indeed a promotion going on in the salon. A person could bring in his old phone and get a new one at a discount. That's how Mickey made the deal, but he paid for the purchase himself. You should have seen her. She came with a phone, with which now even grandmothers do not go, and cannot buy a new one. Even the same, the young man was responsible for his act. You are definitely not all at home, twisted his finger at the temple partner. Okay, I hope she calls me, he winked at him. You didn't even get her number. The friend was amazed at all. I think she'll want to talk to me, Mickey said confidently. Well, went the comrade to the back room to get something to eat. Mickey wasn't the kind of guy who was labeled a nerd or a sucker. He was a good-looking, confident young man. When he'd seen Maddie, something about her had caught his eye. And now all he could think about every day was when she'd call him. Maddie came home. She poured herself some tea, sat at the table with her new phone in front of her. She pondered whether she should dial the number she had today or not. On the one hand, what's the big deal if they go out? But on the other, what if he thinks she's frivolous? Hey, she walked into the office the next day. how's it going? A friend, and in the same person, a coworker, asked after the greeting. I'm fine. Maddie set her bag on the desk and put her phone down. Wow, a new one. She picked up the phone in her hands. Yeah, you won't believe it. The girl started to tell her. No way, laughed Natalie. You know I don't have any extra money. Maddie turned away because they didn't believe her. And why would I lie? Now, Natalie went on the internet and looked up these promotions. Well, what's there? Maddie thought to herself. She could look it up. That's what I was saying. There's no way. The girls read about a real discount. It turns out, Maddie clamped her hand over her mouth. He seems to really like you, laughed the girlfriend. You know, he did give me his number. She opened her contact list. What about you? Natalie got curious. Nothing, I can't dare. Maddie always told the truth. I don't know. If I were you, I'd call. At that moment, the supervisor came through the door and the girls started to work. When it was lunch break, the girlfriends went out for coffee and a scone each. Now would be a good time. Natalie glanced at Maddie's phone. I can't. What am I going to tell him? She blushed. Nothing. Asked to meet tonight. And then you can talk it over. The girl taught her. Do you think so? Maddie stopped. I don't think, but I'm sure. She took the phone from her girlfriend's hands, dialed the number, and put it to Maddie's ear. There were only 3 or 4 beeps, but in that time Maddie had experienced such excitement. Her heart was pounding in her chest. She thought the pounding would make her unable to speak. Her mind was all jumbled up. Hello, Mickey answered. An unfamiliar number popped up on his screen. He hoped it was Maddie. Hi, it's me, she said very quietly. Maddie, he clarified, because he'd been getting calls from different unfamiliar numbers lately, and he'd asked her name from all of them. Yes, she looked at Natalie and nodded. And I thought you wouldn't call anymore, he admitted. You know, I'm a little busy right now. I'm on my lunch break, but if you don't mind, we could meet tonight, she said in a rush, because she was so shy. Sure, tell me where and I'll come. He didn't want to stress the girl. Come on, I'd better go to your salon. Maddie didn't want him to think he owed her. She always did everything herself. She wasn't used to someone helping her. Okay, I finish at 6. I'll be waiting for you. I could hear him smiling. There you go, and you were afraid. It's no big deal, Natalie told her as Maddie put the phone away. She was still all red and her hands were shaking with excitement. That's the first time I've ever had that, the girl exhaled. They ate lunch, went back to work, and after that they were so loaded with work that there was no time to lift their heads. But when 5 o'clock struck, the girl got up from her chair. She was going home, and what she didn't have time for, she decided to finish tomorrow. Aren't you going home? Natalie asked, because it was the end of the day. And why? I'll go straight from here. Catherine is at home today with a neighbor. I'll warn her that I'll be late. Maddie looked at her friend. She did not understand this running. What about getting dressed, putting on makeup, styling her hair, taking a shower after a ball? Natalie would never go on a date like that. She needed a day to get herself in shape. We'll go out tonight, and then we'll see if it's okay to get dressed up right away. Let him see how real I am. She didn't want to show Maddie that she liked him too. Okay, do what you want, said goodbye friends, and agreed that Maddie will tell everything tomorrow. The girl stayed in the office. There was still a whole hour left before the appointed time. It was possible to finish some work, so that tomorrow there would not be such a jam. She did everything, and did not notice how the time passed. Then the girl got up, went to the mirror that hung in the hallway. That's it. Don't be afraid of anything. It's okay. You're brave and you'll succeed. She looked at herself in the reflection. Maddie had never asked anyone out on a date. She had always been modest. Now here she was walking, wondering what was going to happen next. Mickey was already waiting for her at the entrance. She saw him from a distance. The excitement started to rise inside her again. Like a true woman, you're a little late, he laughed and greeted Maddie. You could see the guy was relaxed, he wasn't worried or embarrassed. Sorry, she was very embarrassed, so she spoke one-wordedly. That's okay, let's go. He beckoned her to follow him. Where to? She wasn't going somewhere specific because she wasn't ready for that. Just for a walk. Why are you so scared? He realized that it was the first time she was in such a situation. No, I can't stay long. She didn't say the reason why she needed to go home early. Okay, a couple hours, and I'll walk you out, he promised her. Okay, warped the girl next to him. Why did you call anyway? He asked her. I found out that you cheated on me, and I couldn't help but call. She was telling the truth again, because she didn't want to lie from the beginning. Well, I'm sorry, I hope you're not giving up that phone, he realized. Of course not, but I'm going to pay you back. Maddie looked at him. Oh, here we go, everyone's so decent, Mickey laughed. They reached the cafe. The guy suggested they go in there. Maddie didn't want to at first, but then agreed 1 cup of tea wouldn't do her any harm. Champagne. They sat down at a table, and the young man asked the girl, "What are you doing?" She made big eyes. "What's the big deal? I'm next to a pretty girl. Why not?" He did not understand why she so refuses everything. Okay, I can have some, she agreed, but she thought she was on a roll tonight. Mickey ordered. He wanted to get the moon out of the sky for her. He liked her so much. But the boy could see that Maddie was still undecided. When the sparkling wine arrived, he poured it into glasses. "Maddie, I want us to be together forever." He raised his glass. "Jesus, Mickey, you've made up your mind so fast." The girl blushed to the tips of her ears. "When I saw you, I realized that this is my destiny," he said frankly. "Okay, give me time to think." She took a sip. Gas bubbles hit her nose. Not at all mind, he told many funny stories. The girl relaxed. Further, the evening passed more quietly. Maddie kept looking at her watch. "I hope you will not run away today, leaving me a shoe," laughed the guy. "I don't get it. What are you talking about?" Maddie looked at him surprised. "About Cinderella. She, when she came to the ball, also all the time looked at the clock, and then took and left the prince, without saying a word to him." He retold the plot of the fairy tale. "So you are a prince," smiled the girl. "Anything is possible." He took the champagne and poured more. "I have to go." She looked at the time again. "Let's go." He did not persuade her, because he realized that they had many happy days ahead of them. They went outside. It was nice to walk down the quiet streets, just the two of them. Maddie wondered how the young man would react when she told him about the baby. When the young people reached the house where the girl lived, they simply said goodbye. "Will we meet tomorrow?" Mickey asked. He wanted it so badly, and he wished she would reciprocate. "I don't know. I have a lot of things to do." She was telling the truth because she couldn't leave her daughter with her neighbor every night. "You are so modest and secretive, but I even like it." He took her hand and looked into her eyes. "That's it, I have to go." Maddie turned around and walked into the entryway. She didn't want anything to happen between them tonight. "Bye," the guy said when she was no longer outside and the entryway door closed. Mickey went home. He didn't know why the girl was so uncooperative. At some point he stopped. He thought, what if she had a husband or just a boyfriend she didn't want to talk about? But at the same time he did not believe it, because such a modest girl could not walk left and right. The young man somehow waited for the next day. When it was lunch break, he dialed Maddie's number. Earlier, he just did not dare to bother her. He was afraid that she had a lot of work, and she might be offended. "How's my modest girl doing?" he asked her when she answered. "Hi." She was embarrassed again. Good thing he couldn't see it. "If you can't tonight, maybe you and I could meet up now and have coffee." The guy didn't even ask, he asserted. "Okay," she quickly agreed, because she didn't want to discuss it in front of everyone. He waited for her at the exit of the building, and then they went to the cafeteria that was nearby. Mickey did what a real man should do all the time. He opened the door in front of Maddie when they got to a table, pulled back a chair, and then placed their order. "What will you have?" he asked the girl before he did. "A cappuccino," she replied. Maddie really liked that drink, but lately she had to make do at home with a simple instant one because she didn't have any extra money. Now, he held up his hand for the waiter to approach them. "You're so..." Na raised her eyes at him. "What kind?" laughed the young man. "I don't know." Attentive, she picked up her napkin and now focused all her attention on it. "Maddie, I've already told you that I like you and I'd like to start dating you." He repeated again what he said a day ago. "Okay, there's just one thing you need to know." The girl got excited. "Are you married?" Immediately, he made the assumption that tormented him the most. "No, I would have confessed right away," she laughed. "I don't care about the rest." He breathed a sigh of relief. By now dinner was coming to an end. "Mickey, I can't go out with you tonight. Come and visit us." With these words they walked to the steps of the organization where Maddie worked. "I'll be there at 7 o'clock then." He was very thoughtful. The guy went to work and thought to himself, why she said to us, who she lives with. Probably that's what she wanted to talk about. But in the end the guy decided that today everything would become clear and he wouldn't have to think and guess anymore. Maddie didn't stay late today. She left home on time. There were still a lot of things to prepare. On the way she went to the store, bought the essentials. No frills. "Aunt Sveta, good evening." She knocked on the neighbor's door where her daughter was. "Come in, now we'll drink tea and talk," welcomed her woman. "No, I have no time today. Ekaterina, let's go home," she called the girl. Well, then next time," upset neighbor. "Sorry." Maddie, in front of her, was also ashamed. Sits constantly with her child, and she cannot even talk to her. They entered the apartment. There the girl immediately went to the kitchen, put the kettle on. She still had to change. "Mummy, is someone coming to see us?" There was a little girl standing in the hallway. "Yes, a very nice uncle," she told her. "Is he my daddy?" The girl had never met him. "No, but maybe he will be." The mother hugged her daughter. "What's his name?" the little girl asked. "Mickey," her mom smiled back at her. "Like a cat," Catherine laughed then. "Oh, you can't say that," her mother wagged her finger. "Well, in front of him will not say," promised her daughter. "Well done," they hugged. And after that they went to the kitchen, where Maddie boiled oliverones, printed stew, fried everything. At that moment, there was a knock at the door. "Now," shouted the hostess, and went to the door. "Is that him?" Catherine made big eyes. "It must be," her mother whispered to her. Maddie opened the doors. There was indeed Mickey. He stood with a bouquet of flowers, which he immediately gave to the girl. "Hi," he smiled. "Come in." She walked through the apartment so Mickey could come in. "Oh, who's this here?" He saw the girl and squatted down. "Hello." The little girl came up to him. "What's your name?" Looked at the hostess, as if looking for support from her. "Catherine," answered the girl. "And me?" He held out his hand to her, but he didn't have time to say her name. "I know Mickey." She smiled a sincere, childish smile. "Yeah, did Mom tell you yet?" He got to his feet. "Of course, she and I were just talking. I also told her that you have a name like..." Maddie realized what was about to happen. "Okay, let's go to the kitchen," she said quickly. "And I brought the cake," pulled out of the bag the young man wrapped. "Yay!" shouted Catherine. They all walked together to the kitchen. Then Maddie made tea, then sliced the cake. Mickey sat looking around. "Are you renting an apartment?" He guessed, because it was a bit of a mess. "Yeah," she nodded. "I see, me too." He was quiet for a while. "Catherine, go to the room, Uncle Mickey and I need to talk," her mother asked her. Right away, she took her plate of cake and tea. "Why didn't you tell me right away?" Mickey asked immediately. Why, do you mind? Maddie understood. Not many men want to date a girl who has a child. On the contrary, I'm all for it. He took her hand in his. You're not cheating. Maddie glanced down at him. Of course not. As they say, there are no other people's children, smiled the young man. Okay, sighed the girl. She didn't want to talk about it much. What okay? I offer her my strong male shoulder, and she's okay, as if offended by Mickey. They sat for a little while longer, and then the young man started to get ready to go home. Are you leaving already? Catherine looked out of the room. Yes, everyone has to work tomorrow. We have to go to bed, he said, and then he looked at Maddie. Don't worry, everything will be fine, he told her. The next day they had coffee together again at lunchtime, and in the evening they went for a walk together. Catherine was with them. After the young man came, helped to do something in the apartment. Going to cafes in the afternoon became a ritual, and in 3 weeks Mickey and Maddie were already deciding who they would go to live with, him or her. It didn't matter, both apartments were rented. She held his hands and couldn't believe that such feelings could exist not only in the movies, but in reality. You see, it happens, he kissed her back. They lived together. Catherine Mickey took Mickey as his own. Everything was very good. They were both working, bringing income into the family. Things were starting to happen. You never told me about Ketchia's dad, Mickey asked her. There was nothing to tell about him. As long as he was comfortable, everything was, and as soon as we stopped satisfying him, he disappeared. The girl smiled sadly. She remembered how she'd met the scoundrel. When she needed him, he idolized her. And then Maddie found out that she was expecting a child. Then her husband told her that he had found someone else and was leaving for her. You see, he's too young to raise kids. She clipped his wings. Were you married? He saw that she went along with him. Yes, not for long, 6 months only, sighed Maddie. How much it hurt her then, she can't even convey it. Okay, let's not talk about it. Mickey hugged the girl, not to give her a reason to remember. After that, the young man made a decision that he would definitely, in a short time, make her an offer. He wanted to do everything for the sake of these two people for whom he now took responsibility. Natalie asked her at work. She was interested in everything. It's very good. It doesn't seem real, like a movie, Maddie said, while she was thinking about something. So enjoy it, before this one runs away, advised her friend. She knew what the girl had in the past. No, this one won't run away. He's going to propose, Maddie said dreamily. What about you? Natalie wondered. And I don't need it. What's the hurry, especially since I've already been there? I know that there's nothing to do in marriage. The girl looked out the window. They gossiped all day, but they didn't agree on anything. Maddie went home. The people she loved were waiting for her there. There was no need for any distractions now, so after the end of the workday, the only way to go was to her home. Mickey, why don't you ever talk about your relatives? Maddie asked him in the evening. What's there to tell about them? He shrugged. I don't know. Anything. Who do you have? Mom, Dad. She tried to get him to talk. No one, he mumbled, and it was obvious that he was very concerned about the subject. Good, she did not pester. She saw that the young man did not want to talk on the subject. In the morning, Maddie got up, began to get ready for work, suddenly dizzy, sat back down on the bed. Sat like that for a few minutes. What's the matter with you? Mickey was concerned. He always noticed when his wife wasn't feeling well. I don't know. I guess I got up abruptly. She got up again, went to the kitchen, and drank a glass of water. Came to work, still felt bad. She didn't realize what it could be. It was like a little poisoning, but Maddie couldn't remember what she had eaten yesterday. Your face was gone, like you'd been out all night celebrating, her friend told her, as she knew how it felt. I feel dizzy, admitted the girl. And what? You're not on hold by any chance? Natalie snickered. What? I realized what her friend was hinting at. The same thing. She looked at Maddie's belly. No, she thought for a moment. No, 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 no. Come on, babies are a blessing. Her co-worker didn't understand. Where are you going? She looked scared. That evening at home with Mickey, they had a serious talk. She didn't want children. One child was enough for her. The young man didn't think so. He wanted, oh, how he wanted, about what he told his beloved. My Lubushka, he hugged her. Tomorrow we go to the registry office. You owe me about one thing, almost cried the girl, but agreed because she was not going to have an abortion. After they filed an application and the day was appointed, Maddie went to the hospital, got on the register. It was so bad she didn't know what to do. She felt nauseous and dizzy all the time. Be patient. It's not much longer. Mickey supported her in everything. The wedding was played modestly. The girl did not want to see anyone. She asked her fiancé to invite only the closest people, and he did so. That's good. Her stomach was reacting to everything. But I promise you that I'll give you a big celebration. Mom and baby were healthy, so they were discharged from the hospital a few days later. How amazed was the young mom when after discharge they arrived home, and their everything was already ready to meet the little resident. Mummy, and where did you get it? Little Katusha was very curious when the woman returned not alone. Little girl, I'll explain everything to you later, Maddie promised her, because now she wanted to put the baby to bed and get some rest herself. And can I rock him? Asked the girl when the brother was put in the crib. How's Tony doing? Mickey asked when Maddie came into the room. He's fine. She sat down next to her husband tiredly. You have no idea how happy I am, he kissed her. I love you, she looked at Mickey. I love you, he kissed her face again and again. After that, all day long after that, Maddie was busy. In the morning she would pack up the little one to take Katia to daycare. After that, home, cleaning, cooking, and then back to daycare in the evening. Yes, it was hard, but on the other hand, she realized that it wasn't easy for Barry either. Did you buy a cake? She called her husband. Today Nikita was 1 year old. She wanted a little celebration, not even for herself, but for the kids. Sure, I'll be right there, Mickey answered her. He stopped by the store after work, bought a cake and a present for his son and daughter. Catherine, lay out the spoons and I'll pour the tea. Now Daddy will be here, Maddie told her daughter. Now, she was glad when her mother asked her for help. Here I am. A man came into the apartment. Yay, Daddy's here. Catherine ran towards him, followed by her little brother. Let's go to the table, called them Mickey. Look what I bought you here. Why so much? Money has nowhere to go. Saw that her husband brought a lot of unnecessary things from the store. It's a holiday, he wondered, so he could make the kids happy sometime. Maddie knew that her husband loved to bring gifts like that, even for her. Yes, it was joyful, but there were times when there was simply no bread to buy. The family, as on other holidays, did not invite anyone, because the guests would have to be treated, and not with what? Why didn't you at least invite Natalie? Mickey often asked. Don't ask, she looked away. Catherine was in first grade, Tony was getting older, Maddie wanted to go back to work after her maternity leave. That's it, a couple more months, and we'll get daycare, she told her husband. That's good, he cheered. That afternoon, Maddie went to work to tell them she was leaving. The first thing she did was look in her friend's office. Hi, she opened the door. Oh, what people, haven't seen you in ages, stood up and walked over to Maddie. How are you? I wanted to ask her, she hadn't been here in a long time. Fine, Natalie looked back at the new girls. Oh, let me get you a drink, it's stuffy in here. Maddie sat down on a chair, she felt sick. Natalie turned away to pour liquid into a glass when she heard a thud. She crouched over Maddie, but she didn't wait for an answer and called an ambulance. The doctors arrived. The girl had already regained consciousness, but they still took her with them to examine her. At the hospital, they put her on an IV. Doctor, "When will they let me go home?" she asked, because Catherine was there alone with little Tony. "Soon, be patient. I don't believe in all these omens." As soon as she thought that everything would start all over again, she just started to vomit. "I'll help you with everything," Mickey promised. There was no doubt in Maddie's mind that it was her husband who had caused this unplanned pregnancy. No matter how hard she braced herself and talked about abortion, she knew there was nothing she could do. This time it went much easier than with Tony. Natalie, when she came to check on her friend's health, was a little shocked by the news. "Well, you're crazy, friend. I won't get married. I won't give birth. And you?" She laughed at her. "Well, stop it. It's sickening without you," Maddie asked her. "Come on, may you be well. I wish you happiness." The girls hugged each other. Natalie left and Maddie was left to sit with her thoughts. How they would last. Yes, Mickey earns money, but it's so little that even now it's not enough. And then, but it was too late to think. The term was decent. It was only necessary to wait for the time when it will be necessary to give birth. Maddie kept thinking about how they would be with the little one. She told Mickey to go to the hospital early because she was afraid that it might happen again like last time. "Whatever you say, Catherine will look after Tony while I'm away," the father of the family said. But it was not scary because the man worked at night. Yes, she was good, responsible. Although the girl was still small, she did everything to ease her mother's worries. Maddie herself went to the hospital, did not ask anyone. Then, before the deadline set by the doctors, there was still a week, but the woman was afraid something might go wrong. Hello, she was met, put in the room. Now she could not worry about anything, because if something starts, the doctors are always there. "I'm so scared," said one of the girls who was lying here on the ward. "What kind of pregnancy are you having?" Maddie asked her. At first, she looked at her. "I'm on my third, and I'm still scared," she told her. It's already known what's going on. Her roommate didn't understand. No one knows how everything will go, and more afraid for the future, not for today, complained Maddie. "Oh, what is there in the future? Everything will be fine." The girl believed in it because she was young and had not yet faced the difficulties that exist in life. They didn't talk anymore, each thinking about her own. Maddie was imagining all the diaper rasping that had bored her lately, and now consider it a new circle. Staying up at night, getting up to the baby, potty, pacifier. She didn't even want to think about it. Labor began early. The doctors praised the woman that she came early. Now there was no need to hurry anywhere. She was quietly transferred to the ward, and there, without any nerves and hurry, all the procedures were done. She screamed. This time it hurt a lot. The last time it had also hurt a lot, but now it seemed to be several times worse. "It's okay. Breathe," the midwife commanded her. "I can't. It hurts." Maddie strained. Now, the doctor saw the head already. Maddie pushed once more, and her next daughter was born. She lay there without strength and did not understand what was going on around her. "Yes," the midwife said, and put the girl on her mother's chest. Aurora, her mother, looked at her. A fitting name, laughed those around them who were here. Mickey didn't have time this time, he was working, but when Maddie called him, he immediately rushed over to the maternity ward. "I love you. Thank you for my daughter," he shouted to her. And she just put her palm to her lips and sent him an air kiss. Her husband at that moment pretended to catch it and press it to his heart, and then they were driving home again. "Promise that we won't have any more children," Maddie begged Mickey. She even wanted to get her tubes tied, but was afraid of the consequences. "I promise," he admired his daughter, who was in his arms at that moment. Home came. All of what had once been Nicky Timo's was now his baby sister's. Crib, stroller, diapers, bonnets, rattles, everything. He gave it to her. "You're my good one. Couldn't mommy just look at it?" Everything was fine at first. Nothing needed to be bought for Aurora. Practically everything was there. Maddie was glad that the finances were starting to be enough. Albeit, they also couldn't afford the extra, but it was easier than before. "I'm going to work," Mickey said, which he did every night. Good rocked his wife to their youngest daughter, who was almost a year old. She heard the door slam, went to the room, but the slamming sounded again. "Forgot to take my phone," the man said. "Why don't you look in the mirror?" Maddie told him. No time, he waved his hand. "Oh, Mickey, God forbid," Maddie said as she looked at the phone. "Hello." She looked at her watch. It was 4:30 in the morning. "Hello, Maddie." A man's voice asked her a question. "Yes, what's wrong?" Her heart was pounding in her chest. "Is Mickey your husband?" the same voice asked. Yes. Tears were already in her eyes and her voice was shaking. "He had a very serious accident today. He is in the hospital now. If you leave the house right now, you may still have time." He disconnected the phone. Catherine, please look after the little ones." I went. The mother was thrashing around the apartment. "What happened?" The girl couldn't understand in her sleep. "I'll come back and tell you everything," her mother told her. She could not call anyone for a long time, and when the car finally arrived, Maddie did not count on anything. "Where's my husband? I'm Maddie," she shouted at the whole ward. "Quickly here," one of the girls in a white coat called out to her. Maddie, her husband, looked at her and leaned back. "Mickey, I love you. Don't go. Don't leave me." She was getting hysterical, but her husband couldn't hear her. "Calm down." They gave her some kind of sedative, but nothing could help Maddie now. The woman was inconsolable. She didn't know how to go on. They brought her home. The Barry was gone, and she knew it. "Mom, what about Dad?" Catherine asked her, but she could not answer her because she was like crazy. Everything helped to do friends and colleagues in the work of men. "How can I now?" Fell a woman on the body of her dead husband, but no one could no longer answer her. "Maddie, calm down." Natalie tried to support her. Everyone understood why the woman was killing herself. After the funeral and the wake, she sat in the kitchen, staring blankly at the wall. "Mummy, the children want to eat." Catherine came up to her. "My darling, how are we going to be now?" Maddie realized that she had babies. She couldn't go to work yet, and she had no money. The rent was paid for several months in advance, and then what? Maddie pulled herself together and went to Social Security. She told them about her problem, and they promised to help her. She could get some clothes or something, but it wasn't enough. "Maddie," the social worker called her in the morning. "We found a small house in the city. You can go there." "Thank you." The woman realized that was the least she could do. She packed up the kids, and they moved in. Next, Maddie went to the Department of Education to ask for a place in a kindergarten. The option they offered was an overnight facility. "If you agree, you can give the boy right now, but there is no place for the younger girl yet. You will have to wait," the specialist explained to her. "Okay, I agree," she thought. "It will be easier this way anyway." "Mom, I will not wear this." Catherine pointed to some rags that her mother said to wear to school. "My dear, think about it. We have nothing now, and we should be happy with what we have." Maddie hugged her eldest daughter. While they were arguing about who would wear what, there was a knock on the door. "Who is it?" The woman looked at Katya. "How should I know?" she shrugged. When Maddie opened, she saw the woman. She was unfamiliar to her. "You don't know me, but I want to help you. I heard what situation you had, and here, I brought you." She pointed at the bag with things. "Thank you. Come in." The landlady let the neighbor into the house. "My daughter's things are there. She's grown up now, but they'll be just right for you." She looked at Katya. "Can I look at it?" asked the girl. She was still a little girl, but she understood a lot. "Yes, of course," she nodded. The girl went to the bag, opened it. There were really good things, which she immediately began to try on. "Thanks again," looked Maddie and the neighbor at all of this. "You what? Anyone could be in this situation." she touched her arm. "You come on in." Maddie really was grateful to her. "Okay, sure. See you later." She looked at the landlady and walked out. "I'm going to school," Catherine said, took her bag and left. Her mother stayed at home. Little Aurora was asleep. She could do things. She washed the floors, did the laundry, cooked. In the evening, when her daughter returned from school, the house was very quiet. "How Tony is missed," the girl said sadly. "Nothing. Let's hope that everything will get better," sighed the mother heavily. Now in the morning, when Catherine left, Maddie did things, and then sat Aurora in the stroller, and with her they went for a walk. One day they were sitting in the park and a woman came up to them. "You're Maddie, aren't you?" she asked her. Yes, she wondered how all these people knew her, since they didn't live very far away. "Your story is all over the neighborhood," she explained. "What's your name?" She had to get acquainted. She couldn't just talk to everyone and not know their names. "Casey," she introduced herself. "Nice to meet you." Maddie didn't know what she wanted from her, but she wasn't mean in appearance. "There's a church not far from here, so you should go and pray, go to a service. It might make you feel better," Casey advised her. "I've never been there," Maddie told her. "Are you baptized?" the woman asked her. Yes, she nodded her head. "All the more reason to go," Cassie insisted. "All right, I'll think about it," Maddie promised her. "You know what a good father we have, you talk to him. Everything will get better right away," the woman kept telling her. "Thank you." Maddie had said that word so many times lately that she was beginning to think it was all she was saying. "You're welcome." Casey got up from the bench and walked away. Maddie sat and thought about her words. What if she really went to church? What did she have to lose? Maybe up there in heaven they would hear her and help her. With these thoughts, the woman returned home. At the weekend, Tony was taken from the kindergarten. How happy everyone was to see him, but he missed him very much. "My darling," his mother and sister hugged him. "Are you going somewhere?" Catherine saw that her mother wore a long skirt and a scarf. "I want to go to church," the woman said honestly. "Okay." The girl didn't discourage her. She would play with her younger brother and sister for now. Maddie walked on, and she didn't know what would come out of it, but she believed that nothing comes easy. As she approached the building, she saw everyone stop and baptize in front of the entrance. She did the same. She went in. Inside smelled of candles and incense. The woman got dizzy, and in the first minutes, she almost fainted. "Are you ill?" One of the women in black took her under her arm. "I'm fine, probably out of habit." She walked on, looking at the walls, the ceiling. There were a lot of icons here that Maddie didn't know anything about. She turned back to the woman who had just helped her. "Yes?" The woman turned to her. "Could you help me? I don't know anything here," the woman asked. "Yes, of course." She took her still under her arm and led her inside, explaining where to put the candles, where and to whom to pray. "Thank you," Maddie thanked her. "You're welcome, and better yet, after it's all over, go to the bishop, talk to him." Another told her the same thing the woman in the park had told her. Maddie did as she was told. Then the service began. It was hard from the get-go. And when it was finally over, the woman went to the one who had been talking and reciting prayers the whole time. "Could I talk to you?" She waited until the man was free. Of course, he held out his hand to her. They went to a corner and Maddie told her story briefly. "Yeah, it's a mess, but don't despair. It can be fixed." He crossed himself. "You can't fix it. You can't bring a man back," she cried. "No need to cry." He touched her hand. "And what can I do?" "There's only one thing to do." She didn't finish. "You what?" "You can't even think about it. It's a big sin. Think about your children." He crossed himself again. "Thank you for talking to me." She looked up at him. "You know what? If you think about it, you can come to our church, and here we'll get you settled," the bishop offered her. "Really?" She couldn't believe it. "Why not?" He stepped a short distance away from her. raised his hand and made a big cross in the air, and then turned around and went to his place. After church, when the woman came out of it, there was a kind of lightness inside. She was not walking, but as if she were flying through the air. How was the trip? Her daughter greeted her on the doorstep. Everything was fine, Maddie thought, whether to talk to Katia or make a decision herself. In the evening, when the younger ones were asleep, she called her daughter into the kitchen and told her everything. "Mom, do you want to go to the convent?" The girl was scared. She was small, apparently, so she associated the woman in the church with a nun. "No, it's just that they offer us a kind of asylum there, school, food, clothes, and everything else," Maddie began to tell. "I don't know." Catherine thought about the fact that she had to change schools already. "Well, we will not hurry with this question. We still have time to think," agreed with her mother. When the conversation was over, they both went to bed because it was already very late. In the morning, Maddie was going to church again, but not alone, but taking the children with her. "Are you ready to go to a place where it's beautiful?" the mother asked the children at breakfast. "Yes," they shouted in unison. "Then let's eat now and get ready." The woman was sure they would like it there. When everyone was ready and about to leave the house, there was a knock at the door. Visitors again. Mom turned to Catherine. This meant she needed to entice Tony and Aurora to come over this time. The woman opened the doors. An unfamiliar man stood behind them. "Hello." She nodded at him and looked to see if anyone else was with him. "I managed to find you," he smiled back. "What did you want?" The woman couldn't understand. "Here, Mickey told me to give this to you, but only if he is not young." He held out the envelope, which was already yellow from old age. "You're not confusing anything?" Maddie asked. "No, goodbye." He turned and strode toward the gate. "Betty, hurry. Hide in the cellar," were the last words the mother shouted to her daughter from the street. The girl was 17 years old. She was very much afraid that this would happen, and it did. Their village stood practically on the outskirts, and all its inhabitants hoped that the Germans would not come to them. But in vain, because those were coming, and on their way did not spare anyone. She ducked into the cellar, closed the hatch behind her, and now sat there without moving. Betty did not know how much time had passed. She heard only explosions and terrible screams. At some point, she decided to get farther away so that no one would find her for sure. Betty woke up. She listened. Everything was quiet. The girl wanted to count how long she had been here, but she couldn't do it. There was nothing to orient herself on. She opened the cellar lid, looked out. There was a hole in the wall of the house where she had lived all her life. "Anybody there?" she asked in a hoarse voice. No one answered her. Betty crawled quietly to the door. She wanted to see what was going on outside and if anyone was still alive. "Mama," she whispered, but even now it was quiet, only the howling of dogs coming from the street. She would have stopped and stayed here, but curiosity got the better of her. When the girl was on the street, she stood on her knees like that. She didn't want to get up. It was scary. Betty crawled. She saw that many houses were burned. In some places people were lying down. And in the distance, she could see and hear that someone was talking loudly. The girl crouched down even lower. "God help her," she whispered and crossed herself. Suddenly, in the distance, she saw someone moving and immediately rushed there. When she crawled up, she saw a young man lying wounded. At first, she did not realize that he was not her own, for he was wrapped in the usual rags and shawls worn by many in the village. She decided that whatever it was, she would save him, dragging him along with her. "Come on, sweetie, give me a hand." They were almost to the house. She dragged him to that very cellar. Now the challenge was how to get him down there without breaking his neck. And then Betty remembered that there was a pile of sacks lying where they used to keep a lot of potatoes. She bent him over so that half his body was inside, and then she quickly went down into the cellar and laid him on the sacks by the shoulders. "That's it. No one can get us now," she closed the lid. As the girl crawled through the house, she took matches to light the kerosene that was inside. Now there was light here, albeit a little, but still. The girl crawled up to the fighter, but as soon as she began to unwind the rags he was wearing, she recoiled. It was the enemy. For a while Betty sat back, not knowing what to do, but after thinking it was the same man, also wounded, she crawled back to him. After examining the soldier, Betty saw that he was wounded in the stomach, but the bullet had gone through and he was alive. Risking her life, she went back up to the house, got some water and rags. She threw down a straw mat to sleep on. Now she bandaged him up, laid him on the bed, moistened her lips with water. "Now I'll cook something to eat," she said. There were various preparations on the shelves, including stew that had been put aside for a rainy day. She printed it out, tasted it, and smeared grease on the soldier's lips. He coughed. "Come to your senses," she asked him. The girl was scared here alone, and here, even if it was the enemy, she was not alone. "Who are you?" he asked, when he woke up a little and looked around. "I don't understand you." Betty smiled at him. The soldier exhaled. He understood what the Russians had, but there was nothing he could do. "Where are we?" He spoke again. Fear was in his eyes. "Still do not understand, but you do not be afraid. Everything is fine." She wanted to stroke his cheek, but he took his head away. It had been a long time, more than a day. Betty fed her rescue. Then they went to bed. They communicated mostly in gestures. The girl had climbed out more than once, and Ivo, as he introduced himself to her, if she understood correctly, couldn't do it. "Look what I found." She brought different things. It was very scary at first, but then not so much anymore. Dank, he looked at the strange girl and was now already smiling at her. "Good." She nodded her head and smiled back at the guy. "Come here," he gestured to the girl. "What?" She came over. "Beautiful," he said with a great accent. "Thank you." She blushed. She too liked this handsome, non-Russian young man. After that he drew her to him and kissed her. It was the first time with Betty, so she immediately recoiled from him. But he only laughed and again pulled her by the hand to himself. The girl thought that he would not do anything to her here, for she could escape at any moment. "You were good," she showed him. "Beautiful." Again he repeated the word he had evidently known before. After that, Betty stopped resisting. There were no more explosions and screams outside, and the young people were still in the cellar. The girl ran about the village, running into houses where no one was already there, looking for provisions and other things she would find. Ivo was fully well by now. Somehow he showed Betty that he could get out of the cellar by himself. He put on what he had and went out of the house. "Where are you going?" She held out her arms to him. "See here," he waved to her. She sat down on the bench and cried, realizing that it was all her own fault, but there was nothing she could do. Threw down a straw mat to sleep on. Now she bandaged him up, laid him on the bed, moistened her lips with water. "Now I'll cook something to eat," she said. There were various preparations on the shelves, including stew that had been put aside for a rainy day. She printed it out, tasted it, and smeared grease on the soldier's lips. He coughed. "Come to your senses," she asked him. The girl was scared here alone, and here, even if it was the enemy, she was not alone. "Who are you?" he asked, when he woke up a little and looked around. "I don't understand you." Betty smiled at him. The soldier exhaled. He understood what the Russians had, but there was nothing he could do. "Where are we?" He spoke again. Fear was in his eyes. "Still do not understand, but you do not be afraid. Everything is fine." She wanted to stroke his cheek, but he took his head away. It had been a long time, more than a day. Betty fed her rescued. Then they went to bed. They communicated mostly in gestures. The girl had climbed out more than once, and Ivo, as he introduced himself to her, if she understood correctly, couldn't do it. "Look what I found." She brought different things. It was very scary at first, but then not so much anymore. Dank, he looked at the strange girl and was now already smiling at her. Good, she nodded her head and smiled back at the guy. Come here, he gestured to the girl. What? She came over. Beautiful, he said with a great accent. Thank you, she blushed. She too liked this handsome non-Russian young man. After that he drew her to him and kissed her. It was the first time with Betty, so she immediately recoiled from him. But he only laughed and again pulled her by the hand to himself. The girl thought that he would not do anything to her here, for she could escape at any moment. You are good, she showed him. Beautiful, again he repeated the word he had evidently known before. After that, Betty stopped resisting. There were no more explosions and screams outside, and the young people were still in the cellar. The girl ran about the village, running into houses where no one was already there, looking for provisions and other things she would find. Ivo was fully well by now. Somehow he showed Betty that he could get out of the cellar by himself. He put on what he had and went out of the house. Where are you going? She held out her arms to him. CEO, he waved to her. She sat down on the bench and cried, realizing that it was all her own fault, but there was nothing she could do. The girl never left. She stayed in the village and began to rebuild the house. The war was coming to an end. The men began to return. Oliver came to his native village and did not recognize it, so it had changed. Almost no whole building was left. Then others began to pull up as well. Hello. Betty heard someone say hello to her. Hello, Oliver, she answered him. Betty? He couldn't believe his eyes. You didn't recognize her. She was smiling. We're there. I was leaving. She was like this. He showed her small stature. Time was running out. She turned away. Can I come in? The man asked. Of course, she went into the house herself. They've done a lot of housekeeping. Oliver sat down at the table. Yes, Betty remembered Ivo right away. How did you stay here? He couldn't understand. Here. She waved her hands and said nothing more. Anything? He looked around the house. Practically nothing. She shook her head. Okay. He realized how difficult it would be for everyone. Now, she went into the cellar, where there was still some salt or stew she did not know. Master, you need to go to the house. He looked at the hole in the wall, which the girl fixed with what she could. No argument. She put everything on the table. How do you like my person? He did not wait for anything, but went straight to the attack. Oliver, she blushed. What's wrong? He didn't understand. I can't promise you anything. She pulled her dress over her stomach. It was already bulging a little. Wow, we were fighting back, and you're here. He pressed his lips together. Go away, she almost cried. Okay, if you tell me everything, it'll be okay. He held out his hand to her. And then Betty told him the story that had happened to her. She cried almost the whole time. The man showed his fist to the invisible enemy. Do not be angry, not nice, so go on. The girl did not want anything from him. It's all right, but in the village you cannot stay. As soon as the baby is born, you must leave immediately, said Oliver. And even better, leave now. They did not decide anything for a long time, took their modest belongings, and went to the neighboring village. They stayed there for a few days, and with their grandfather, they traveled by wagon to a place where no one knew them. Here we'll live. We moved into an empty house on the outskirts. Betty realized that this man had saved her from shame. Well then, we must have a wedding, Oliver said cheerfully. What will people say? Betty looked at him. We did not have time before the war, and there is no way, so now they decided to make a holiday. He said that they would answer to their fellow villagers. Good. The girl hugged him. Then we can invite, and we will prepare. It was decided that the Victory Day will be celebrated, and the wedding will be timed here. All the residents brought what they had from home. It was fun. No one even asked questions, so Betty relaxed. Oliver was willing to do anything for his wife. He never reproached her for anything. Oh, she clutched her stomach. Now, love, ran Oliver out of the house. He ran to the local grandmother midwife to bring her home. Water, rags, she commanded at their house. The man was very worried. He did everything he was told, and after a while the cry of their son was heard in the house. Kolka was born. The happy father threw his hat up. It's a bit early. How long has it been since the wedding? The grandmother came out of the house. It's none of your business, the man said to her. But even from this village they had to leave when they started to talk. And let them talk. The girl did not want to leave the place she had already settled. No, that's not right. Oliver shook his head. And in the other village they were well received. Here no one knew anything. No deadlines were not counted, so they began to live quietly. Oliver got a job. Betty also wanted to work, but the man said she should raise her son first. Harvey is mine. His mother stroked him on the head. He was very much like his father, which made him very sad. What are you doing? Oliver came home, and there was always a hot lunch or dinner waiting for him on the table. He appreciated his wife for that. She had time to take care of the baby and do everything for him. Nothing here. I sing songs, said Betty. Well done. Her husband came up to her and hugged her. How good it was that you came back in time, Betty always said. She realized what she owed to this man. Harvey was growing up. He was already running around the yard, chasing cats. His mother only had time to watch that he did not fall and did not tear his knees. Betty, don't you want to work at the post office? A neighbor asked her. Yes, she would go anywhere now. She couldn't stay at home any longer. Good, then come tomorrow. They will be waiting for you, the woman told her. Thank you. She went to the local kindergarten to get Harvey accepted there. With a bit of effort, she agreed with the head. Now her son had to go to the kindergarten. Now both husband and wife worked. The boy went to the kindergarten. The years went by. There was a real family. Wow, time flies, Oliver said, when Betty collected the boy in the first grade. Yes, it does, she sighed. The boy liked to learn. He was very inquisitive. But when he was in 5th grade, there was an accident. Betty, there's a fire in the stables. A neighbor shouted and ran to their house in the evening. What can I do? She didn't understand, but got ready to run to the scene. There's your Oliver. It's bad, screamed the woman. Betty knew that her husband would rush to the rescue of any living soul, and here were horses. She ran as fast as she could. There were many people near the stables. Betty, he's here, one of the men shouted. Now, she was making her way through a dense wall of people who were shouting. There, he pointed. Betty looked where the man was pointing, and there the beams of the ceiling were starting to collapse. No, she screamed. Someone rushed inside, but Oliver was dragged out alive. How could it be? Someone nearby wailed. Did anyone call a doctor? The neighbor, Betty, asked. Now, but there's probably nothing we can do. The chairman shushed everyone. The doctor confirmed that Oliver had smoke inhalation and was crushed by a beam. Betty just sobbed and smeared her tears on her cheeks. And then there was the funeral, and everyone was here, and it was sad. Isn't Daddy coming back? Harvey asked Mommy. No, honey, we'll have to live alone. She held him close. Now I will be the main helper in the house. Harvey hit himself in the chest. He would never give his mother an offense. He saw how all his life for her father did everything. Of course, Native, as usual, spent his mother in his hair and had to live like that, the two of them, to do everything themselves, to make their way. The son promised and kept his word. He did everything around the house, never slacked off. His mother went to work every day, Harvey to school, and when he got there he started chores. One day when he was 14, he was doing chores as usual. He needed some rags, so he opened the dresser drawer where he had some things he didn't need anymore. While rummaging around, he came across a bundle of letters. Unfolding them, they were written in a language other than Russian, but there was a translation between the lines. Harvey read them and sobbed. "What's this?" His mother came home from work, sat down at the table, and his son threw the letters in there. "Son, why did you get it, and how did you find it?" His mother looked at him and quickly thought of what to say. "It doesn't matter. Tell me how it happened. So Oliver is not my father." He had many questions. "Honey, there was a war. I'm sorry about your mom," she cried. "Tell me." He sat down on the chair across from her, ready to listen. "I saved him." And again Betty had to tell the same story she had told her husband Oliver. Did she have to? He was a kid, and he understood. "Look, it's all happened. Why bring up the past?" The woman didn't understand. "I want to know why you wrote to him again." He nodded at the letters again. "Listen, Harvey, it's an old and long story. Are you sure you want to know it all?" The mother didn't know what to say to her son. "Of course, it's my father." He poked at the letters again. "Then, when Ivor left, I cried for a long time, more because I didn't understand what he was saying to me, not a word at all." A tear rolled down Betty's cheek. "So, what? I've heard that before," was the young man irritated. "I didn't need anything. I didn't know you existed yet either. Nothing was nice." And when a few days passed, a little calmed down, sat down at the table, poured a mug of water, wanted to drink, and saw on the tree a knife cut out some numbers and letters. Honestly, at first I didn't pay attention to it, but at night, when I went to bed, it hit me. It was the address, and no one but him could have left it there. My mother told me emotionally, as if she had gone back there a few years ago. "And you wrote to him," the boy concluded. "No, but I realized that he didn't just leave it there." She tilted her head, ashamed in front of the most beloved person on earth. "So, when did you send your first letter?" Harvey had no patience. "When I heard about you," raised her mother's eyes to him. "And him?" asked the boy, and then he grinned. "He's read everything today." "Yes, I wrote to him that I was expecting a child alone. I do not know how he read my letter, but from him came a reply, in which I did not understand anything. And when the time passed, I went to the school, to the German teacher, and she translated it for me," sighed Betty. "He didn't want to know you." Harvey quoted a line from the letter. "You know, Clara translated it verbatim. Maybe it didn't say that." And again a tear left a wet trail on her cheek. "And then he asked you to come over," and Harvey pulled one of the letters out of the pile. "Yes, but how could I? Because I was already with Oliver, and it all came to an end," she said sadly. "Mom, how could you? While our soldiers were fighting them, you—" He didn't finish, though it was clear. "I'm sorry, son." She stood up, came over, wanted to hug him, but the boy shrugged. "We've been told all our lives that this is the enemy, that we won, and now I find out that you—" With this, he was ready to cry, but restrained himself. After this conversation, the boy did not talk to his mother for the rest of the school year. And after that he silently packed his suitcase and went to live in the city. "Son," she looked at him as he left, and she remembered the moment when Ivo left the same way. "Goodbye." Harvey didn't even turn around. The young man arrived, got a job. Now he was studying and working at the same time. Sometimes the lad thought of his mother, but always pushed those thoughts aside. Harvey knew what he wanted, but he never achieved anything. When he was already in his 30s, he met a woman. They decided everything quickly, and now they were standing in the registry office. "Why aren't any of your relatives here?" Ariana asked him then. "I have only my mother, but she couldn't come." The guy lied. He still hadn't communicated with the woman, though she had made more than one attempt. Understandably, Ariana felt bad that this was the case. After all, she too only had a father who was sick and couldn't. "What's wrong with you, all these people?" He pointed at his friends. "It's okay," the bride told him then. Not even a few months after the wedding, she got pregnant. Harvey wasn't exactly happy. He kept muttering to himself about age. Where to have a baby, soon to retire. that the child old people will take to kindergarten or school, he said then. Enough, and older people give birth. His wife refuted his opinion. In the family, everything was fine. Pregnancy, strangely enough, went well. The boy Mickey was born exactly on time, and as soon as the father saw him, he was ready to take back all the words he had said before. Son, when you grow up, I'll tell you so much and show you so much. The father sat by the crib. At this moment he was thinking more and more about his mother, how she was alone there, what she was doing. Now that he had a child of his own, he realized how much he had hurt her then. And Mom, what had she done wrong to him, giving birth? Harvey had made up his mind. As soon as Mickey was old enough, he would definitely go to his mom's house. What's the matter, Betty? You're still alone. A neighbor came to see her. I'm very guilty before my son, and he can't forgive me. He holds a grudge for life, she said tearfully. Write to him, the woman advised. I wrote, it doesn't help. The letters just come back. She pointed to the dresser, where there were a dozen envelopes. That's where the grief is, sighed her friend. And so they sat for many evenings until, one day, the door opened and Harvey appeared on the doorstep. Son, Betty jumped to her feet. She recognized him. He smiled and hugged the woman. What are you doing here? She couldn't stop crying. Let's at least sit down at the table. He looked at the neighbor. Okay, goodbye, I'm going. She got up and left the house. Betty was in the house making tea, putting everything on the table. Harvey, how can it be, after all these years, without warning, she wailed. Mother, I've come to apologize. He bowed his head. What are you saying? It's my fault. I'm the one who should apologize. She hugged him and kissed him again and again. And I got married. He showed the ring on his finger. Congratulations, she started cutting pies. And now you have a grandson, Mickey, the man smiled. Oh, what a joy, she splashed her hands. They sat at the table talking for a long time. And when it was late, Harvey went to the place where his corner used to be. Shall I stay with you and talk some more? He asked Betty. What do you ask? You can move in. She was always glad to have them. When the beds were made, the son sat down on his mother's bed. What are you what? She stroked his hair as in childhood. In fact, I came not only to apologize. I want to know about my roots. Will you give me the address of this Ivo of yours? He lowered his eyes to the floor. Sure, but I doubt he still lives there. Stood up and went to the chest of drawers. It's worth a try, her son answered her, and took the envelope from her hands. They talked practically until morning, Harvey realizing how many years he had lost while he was angry with his mother. Now he was 100% sure he would never leave her alone again. In the morning, Harvey woke up, had breakfast. All right, I'm off. As soon as I know something, I'll let you know right away. The man hugged his mother. Good luck, she crossed him on his way. After that, Harvey got into the car and drove to his home, where his wife and child were waiting for him. He decided not to say anything to anyone yet, until he figured it out for himself. Why get people's hopes up? He drove and planned how and what would happen. Hello. He walked into the house, and as his son threw himself on his neck, he realized how his mother felt when he arrived. So, how was the meeting? His wife asked him. Great, now maybe we will have more relatives. He hugged her and whispered these words in her ear. What other relatives? She didn't understand. I don't say anything yet. He showed her the invisible key he used to close his mouth. Oh, all he has some secrets. Ariana kissed her husband on the cheek. When Harvey was at work the next day, he thought long and hard about whether or not to write to the address his mother had given him. He decided to, took out a piece of paper and wrote the first 2 lines. Then he thought it was funny, crumpled the paper, and threw it in the bucket. Hello, Ivo. I don't know if you remember or not, but there was a girl in your life whose name was Betty. She wrote to you saying she was expecting a baby after you left. Well, that's me. My name's Harvey. I thought I'd find out about the roots I really have. I look forward to hearing from you. Sincerely, Harvey. He reread his lines once more, folded the sheet, sealed it in an envelope, and went to the post office to mail it. Why do you keep rattling them? His wife asked him when he checked the mailbox several times each day. I'm waiting for an important letter, he told her. Well, she said nothing, only sighed. It had been a long wait, 4 years, and Harvey had given up hope that an answer might come, but strangely enough, it did. The man came from work, automatically, as he had done for many days, months and years, opened the drawer, waiting for nothing, and there was happiness, an envelope. Ariana, he answered. He came home dancing. Who is he? She still didn't know what her husband was hiding. I'll tell you. He went into the kitchen to read it. To Harvey's great regret, the letter was in German, as it had been in the past, and it would be impossible to read it today. He put it in his jacket pocket and decided that tomorrow he would go to the teacher, as his mother had done. Well, his wife asked him when he came out of the kitchen. Nothing, he waved his hands. I see, another mystery. She sighed and went to the room where her son was already asleep. The man could not sleep all night. He was tossing from side to side. Different thoughts went into his head. What if it said that the addressee no longer lived at that address? Then he dismissed the thought. In the morning, he woke up not at all. I'm going to work, he said to his wife and son, then left the apartment. Bye, Ariana shouted as the door had already slammed shut. The man thought about where and who he should turn to. What if he went to the school, found the German teacher, and just showed the letter? The man was somehow embarrassed about it. He came to work, took his seat. Why are you so glum? A colleague asked him. I need to translate the text from German, and I do not know who to turn to. Harvey did not hide from him. Let me see, he asked him. Do you know the language? He couldn't believe his luck. I can't say exactly what it says, but I can read it, he assured him. Here, he took out the envelope. So, let's see. The comrade began to run through the lines. Well, what is it? Harvey couldn't wait. Wait, aha, aha, aha. Continued to read. Oh, you don't understand anything. The colleague waved his hand at him and wanted to take the letter. Wait, what's your hurry? He stopped him. Tell me, what is it about? Harvey couldn't stand it. Look, Ivo is writing to you. He showed him the lines. I know that without you, Harvey was getting annoyed. He says he knows Betty and offers you a meeting in 6 months. He pointed to the name of the city. Wow, the man whistled. Who is it? Now there were questions from my colleague. I'll tell you later if I meet him. Harvey took the letter from him. In the evening, when he got home, told his wife that he would have a business trip to the capital in a few months. She only smiled, probably already realized that her husband was looking for someone. But since he did not speak, she also kept silent. Are you sure you need this meeting? Ariana asked him. Absolutely, he answered first and then stared at her, but didn't say anything. Okay, I won't interfere. She stepped back into the kitchen. The whole time Harvey was walking around not himself. He didn't know what he was going to talk to this man about, what he would say to him, or how they would even communicate. He was worried. Finally, the time for the meeting came. All right, wish me luck, Harvey said to Ariana. Good luck, and that everything works out, she whispered in his ear and kissed him on the cheek. It was Harvey's first time on an airplane. It was unusual. He made a wish. Landing at the airport, he drove to the hotel that was listed in the letter. He checked into the room, now wondering how they would meet. In the evening, there was a knock on the room door. Harvey opened it. Good afternoon, stood a man who spoke with a heavy accent. Hello, nodded Harvey. You speak our language? Harvey exhaled with relief. My name is Klaus. I am Ivo's son. You wanted to meet us. He extended his hand to greet and introduce himself. You speak our language? Harvey exhaled in relief. Yes, He was smiling with all his 32 teeth. "Shall we go out, or are you coming to my place?" the landlord asked. "Yes, to the restaurant. My father is already there, waiting for us," he said. He spoke so fast that even in Russian Harvey could hardly understand him. "I'll be right down," he promised. When the door closed, Harvey began to pace around the room. He didn't know why he was so agitated. In the end, he did nothing, combed his hair, and went out into the hallway. A man was walking down it, and his hands and feet were shaking. "Greetings." He walked over to the table where Klaus and another man were sitting. "Ivo." The man stood up and shook his hand. "Nice to meet you." He looked at him. "You know, this may sound funny, but my father didn't want to come here. He was scared," Klaus said. He was still sitting with a strange smile. "That's the way it is now." Harvey was out of sorts. They started talking, Klaus acting as translator. "I knew you existed a long time ago," Harvey admitted. "Yes, my father says he did, too," Klaus nodded. "So many years lost," the man said bitterly. Dad didn't believe it at first, but when Betty wrote several letters, he decided she couldn't write the same thing in each one. The son looked at his father. "Exactly," sipped Harvey's water. "Ivo wants to meet up again with Betty," fell silent his son. "Okay, but we'll have to go," he added, gesturing, because he thought he wasn't being understood. "If we are already here, we are ready for anything," translated again the man's words, Klaus. "When do we leave?" Harvey imagined how happy his mother would be to see this man after all these years. "Tomorrow," the guest of the capital called the waiter. They ordered something to eat and talked a lot. Then Ivo went to his room, and Klaus and Harvey went to his. "Our parents had a lot of fun," said the foreign friend, "and maybe a brother on the way." "Yeah, how long have you known about this?" Harvey was curious. "No, after your letter came, it went to my father's old address, but we were tracked down. That's why it took so long to get a reply," Klaus explained. "Now I see." They entered the room. The men talked for a long time about who lived where and how. It turned out that Klaus' mother had passed away for several years due to illness. He has 2 other sisters and a brother, nephews, a large family. "And if everything is confirmed, then we are definitely waiting for all of you to visit." The man glowed with happiness. When it was already late, the men separated, and in the morning they got on the plane again and flew to visit Betty in a distant village. Worried, Harvey leaned over to Ivo. "No," he answered sharply. "Don't mind him, he's just worried," his son explained. "Well, I'm scared of flying too," Harvey agreed with him. "That's not why he's scared. It's because he's meeting someone he knew in the worst years of his life," Klaus said quietly. They had landed. Now there was a bus ride to be had. But that didn't scare anyone. The guests looked around in wonder. They were interested in everything. "That's it. Only a few kilometers left, and we'll be at my mother's house." The man could not speak with excitement. They got there, and then they walked for a while. When they approached the house, Harvey was ahead of them and put his finger to his lips. "Mom, I have a surprise for you." He entered the house. The woman was sitting with a neighbor as usual. "What?" She got up. "Let's go," called her son. They went out on the porch. One look, and she recognized him, cried. "Betty," Ivo said. Her husband warned her not to say anything to anyone. He didn't want anyone to know and judge his family. Time passed, and Harvey couldn't get up the nerve to visit his relatives. "Why are you stalling? It's been 2 years since we met." "Honestly, I don't know." He threw up his hands. "That's it. Write a vacation request at work, and we're going." Ariana had never been abroad. She really wanted to. Mickey was 10 years old at the time when his parents finally packed up. They decided that the boy would still have time to go, so they took him to his grandmother's house. "Are you sure you've made up your mind?" Betty asked them. "Of course, we already have the call," smiled Ariana. "Then have a good flight." She hugged first her daughter-in-law, then her son. And they went. It was interesting, mesmerizing. When they were in Germany, Ariana couldn't get enough of it. It wasn't like this. I wish I could move here to live, she said dreamily. What problems? Her relatives couldn't understand. It's decided. Now we'll go back, get Barry, and, if possible, come here, the woman said. Harvey thought, why did he procrastinate with this acquaintance for so many years? Now, long ago, all his dreams would have been accomplished. After they walked through the beautiful streets of the small town, walking home, where everything was also beautiful. I can't believe I have to fly away from here, Ariana said. We'll definitely come back. Klaus and Harvey shook hands. They got on the plane reluctantly, a force pulling them back. Goodbye, Ariana whispered as she looked out the window, but the date was not to be. As the plane gained altitude, something happened to the engine, a major airplane crash. Betty and her grandson were baking pies, and at one point her heart gave such a pang that she even sat down on a chair. Grandma, what's wrong? Mickey came over to her. It's all right, honey. She looked at the boy. And then they were told the terrible news. It can't be. The woman couldn't believe it. She realized Mickey had been orphaned. It happens, shook her head, a specialist from some services. The happy and carefree life of the boy ended there. 3 years later, his grandmother felt ill. She called an ambulance, and while the car was on its way, she called her grandson to her. Take this, she gave him an envelope in her hand. What is it? He didn't understand. It's your grandfather's address in Germany. If it's too bad, write there and everything will be fine, she told him. Mickey took the envelope, but he thought his grandmother was just delirious because she was sick. And then she didn't come back, and strange people came for Mickey and took him to an orphanage. No good things were to be expected at this institution. The most important thing is that the boy got a best friend there, with whom he then became friends for a very long time, you could say, until his death. Nanny, they were already working together, and Mickey approached him. What do you want? He was in a bad mood, as usual. Can I use your services? He asked. Sure, the friend grinned. I don't know if it's true or not, but if something happens to me, can you give this envelope to my wife? He handed him an old envelope. Sure, what's in it? $1 million. Nanny was smiling again. I don't know, maybe more, shrugged Mickey. It was 6 months before the accident the man had been in. And now this envelope was in the hands of Maddie, who didn't understand anything. What is this? Asked Catherine when she saw the yellow old envelope. I don't know. The woman shrugged her shoulders. She herself was curious. You and Daddy did not hide anything from each other. Why he did not tell about it? Did not understand the girl. Let's better see, then all the questions will immediately disappear, offered Maddie. Okay. They went to the table and opened what they had just been handed. Look, there's something written here. Catherine showed her mom. Yes, she started to read the story first, and when she got to the end, she cried a couple times. Let's write, looked at her mom. Do you think it's convenient? Maddie doubted. And what's the big deal? It says here, if something bad happens, then be sure to write, showed her the girl. So how many years ago it was, the woman twirled the envelope in her hands. So, what? Will it hurt us if we do it? Her daughter didn't understand. Okay, we'll decide tomorrow. She put it all back together and went about her usual business. In the evening, Maddie got a call from Natalie, a friend who always supported her in everything. Hi, can you come over? She asked her. Of course, lately Natalie had been concerned at all about what was going on in Maddie's family. They met that evening, and her friend showed her around and told her everything. And you still think, right? Catherine says, right, and that's it. No, so no. She looked at Maddie with big eyes. All right, the woman decided. At night, when Natalie had left and Catherine had gone to bed, she wrote a letter saying that Mickey had died and all that. The next day she sent it off, though it was funny. Hardly anyone wrote letters like that anymore. The reply came 6 months later. "Mommy, we have a letter." Catherine walked into the house. Maddie took the envelope, unfolded it. It said that they were expected, and the address where they should fly. It can't be. Maddie remembered the words of the woman from the park, that she should talk to the father, and everything would be all right at once. It was scary, but there was nothing to lose. The woman packed the children, the documents were ready, and now they were on their way to a distant, unknown country. At the airport they were met by strangers, an elderly man. Guten Tag. Maddie had learned it on purpose. "Hello, I'm Klaus," he told her. "Oh, you speak Russian," she was taken aback. "Let's go." He brought her to his house. Klaus's wife was there, as well as his children and, as Maddie realized, grandchildren. "I'm kind of uncomfortable," the woman said as she was seated at the table. "It's okay. If it wasn't for your grandmother, none of us would be here," Klaus said with a smile. They started reminiscing about that story again, showing pictures of my grandfather and father. "Wow, I didn't know anything about that," Maddie said. "Your family is so uncommunicative. First the son took years to write to us, and then the grandson." The man smiled. "There can't be any questions for me. I only found out after my husband died," Maddie sighed. "No, we're not telling you anything. We'd like to see everyone. We've only seen Mickey on the photo, and even then small," said the owner of the house. "The children are very happy here. Their mother hasn't seen them at all since they entered the house." "Don't worry, they are looked after," Klaus said. Maddie was offered to stay here. She had to find a job and of course learn the language. The woman said she would try, and it all worked out quickly, but she knew she would do her best and everything would work out. One day she was walking in the park, which was in the backyard of her house, and a man came up to her. "Hi," he said to her with an accent. "Guten Tag," she said, a word she had known for a long time. "Bruno," he extended his hand to her. "Maddie," she nodded, thinking the family had some guests. "Oh, you've already met my son," Klaus told the woman. "Wow," she laughed. From that moment on, the man never left her side. He invited her for walks, took her to different places, and then he asked her out on a date. How is that possible? She didn't understand. "Your children are related to us, but you're not," he said, smiling. "Well, yes," she stretched out. After one date, there was a second, and then another, and another. "Will you marry me?" Bruno handed her the ring one night. Jesus, Maddie clutched her cheeks, which were flaming. The poor widow had no idea her life would change so drastically. Just yesterday, she was walking around begging for alms, and now she's in another country and they're making her an offer. "Accept it," Klaus nodded. "Yes," she said, "but what about my children?" "Your children will be mine because they have our blood in them," he was sure of it. "What a man you are," she hugged the man. In the evening, the whole family celebrated the event. The wedding was in the near future. Everyone was very happy, especially the bride and groom. Who would have known that the secret that was in the family of her late husband Barry will give such a result, she later said more than once to her husband. "I love you," he answered her. "Mummy, and you didn't want to write a letter," Catherine told her, who also liked everything here. "Thank you, sweetheart," she stroked her head. Bruno and Maddie moved into a separate house. Now they had a shared household. The woman cooked dishes that were unknown to the man, but he liked them so much he couldn't refuse them. "Will you bear me another child?" he asked her constantly. Yes, now already Maddie did not doubt anything, the way she did before. "I am the happiest man in the world," he shouted then. And indeed, it was only a few months after the wedding when Maddie announced that they were about to have a little one. Now she remembered finding out about her past pregnancies and thought that this was actually bliss. She'd thought differently before. "How are you feeling?" her husband asked her 100 times a day because he was very worried. Catherine, who was already quite an adult, was also happy for her mother, The younger ones also touched her belly and smiled. "So, who do you think we're having?" The whole family was together again. Maddie loved it so much. Before they were just by themselves, and now there were so many people. "A boy," shouted Bruno first. "Why not a girl?" Catherine asked. She wouldn't mind having another baby girl. "We'll find out soon," Klaus reassured them, and they started dinner. Maddie already knew her body, so she asked to be taken to the hospital a little early. Everyone was surprised at that, but agreed. Now she was lying in the clinic, and she imagined what would happen. As usual, it was very painful, but the local doctors put some kind of injection, a little released. Maddie was glad of that. A sturdy little boy was born. The woman didn't want to name him herself, because she thought the family might have its own traditions. "I didn't give him a name, waiting for you," she told the many relatives when they came to see her. "He will be called Mickey," her husband told her. "What are you doing?" She was stunned. "Let us have a piece of my brother," the man said. "Okay, then promise me that when Barry turns 2 or 3, we'll fly to everyone's graves," she asked him. "I promise." He loved her dearly. When the family came home, they had aunts, uncles, grandmothers, and grandfathers visiting them every day. Everyone brought gifts and wanted to hang out. "Why didn't I have all this before?" Maddie laughed often. Now that everyone was involved, she didn't even have to do anything. Everyone knew what and when and what time. "Is it really like that?" she asked her husband, and at that moment she remembered asking Mickey the same question, only on a different occasion. Yes, she loved Bruno, but there was more respect in their family than the reverent feelings between her and Mickey. "Are you ready to travel?" her husband asked her 2 years after Mickey was born. Of course, she looked up to him, a man who, if he made a promise, was sure to keep it. "Would you take me with you? I want to visit my brother's grave," Klaus asked them. "Who would mind?" The family laughed, and a few other relatives gathered with them. When they were at the airport, it seemed that only their family was there. Catherine and the boys were running around the small outlets that were there. Mickey was crying in his mother's arms. He was scared of it all. Finally, everyone boarded the plane and flew. Maddie looked out the window. She knew it would only be a few days, and they would be here again. "Well, hello, motherland." She stepped off the plane. "You kissed the asphalt," her daughter said. "Why? If I have to, I'll kiss it," smiled her mother in response. First, they drove to the village where the grave of Grandma Betty, her son Harvey, and his wife Ariana was. "Hello, brother," Klaus said, and put down the flowers. "Yeah, Betty made a mess," said Maddie. After that they went to the town where Mickey and Maddie lived, and there they came to his grave to visit him. "Hello, my darling," said Maddie, looking up at the picture. "We look a bit alike," Bruno told her. "Maybe I chose you for a reason." She turned to him and smiled. "Look, brother, we have a piece of you now." He led her to the grave. "That's enough." Maddie couldn't hold back her tears. She asked for everyone to leave and let her talk to her ex-husband alone. "I hope you don't hold it against me for being with Bruno right now. He's a really good man, and he's supportive of all of us. I think you're just glad you did," wailed Maddie at the graveside. "Where to now?" everyone asked the woman. "Now we're going to the temple where I think I've been heard and helped." She said the address and everyone went there. "Wow, it's beautiful," the relatives said when they got out of the car. "Yes, and that's where I was," after which they brought me your envelope, she confessed to them. Everyone crossed in front of the entrance, went in, bought candles. Maddie went straight to the priest. "Hello, do you remember me?" She approached the man. "Of course, how could I not remember? You never came then." He smiled into his beard. "There have been such changes in my life that it is impossible to believe in them. And how not to believe in miracles?" She cried again. "Don't." He crossed her as he had then, turned and left. The family stayed here for a few days, and then they had to fly back. And now Maddie did not know when she would return to her homeland again.
Thank you for watching this video to the end. Subscribe to the channel. Like it, write comments if you like the story, and see you on the channel.